in one piece. So this morning is special. I was going to say it's going to be special. Every morning is actually special, but I'm really excited about what we began doing yesterday as we began looking at the book of Nehemiah. I get very excited. I was actually prayed this morning that God, please help me not to be too excited. That I will speak too fast or I will leave some details out. But I'm very excited because when I study the Bible and each time I study and the story is about me, I don't know about you, when you're reading the Bible and you're literally seeing yourself, I get very, very excited. So Nehemiah is my story. As a person, I've always seen myself as a builder all my life. But today, we're not talking about building today. We're talking about one aspect in rebuilding, which is what we're doing really. We are talking about rebuilding. And all of us, we are at various points in restoration. Okay, we are at various points in restoration. So we're going to look at rebuilding broken walls, which is what we started yesterday. And restoration with a purpose, not just restoration for restoration's sake, but restoration with a purpose. Today, we're looking at Nehemiah Chapter 2. But before I jump in, just to give us some back history on what is happening right now. In the Old Testament, or rather in the Jewish community, the book of Nehemiah and Ezra were considered one book, really, because it's the same story, just a line of story. They were considered, one book. But when you look at what is happening at this time, remember when we finished First Kings, Second Kings, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, you see Israel is basically, jumping from an era where they had monarch, from an era of monarchy, to now they are a community of a community, I would say, defined by written law and local reconstruction. That is what they are focused right now. All they had right now was the written law and, of course, the local reconstruction. The Persians will not allow you to install a king. So even though they had somebody of the lineage of David, but they will not allow you to install a king in your district. So what did they have? The written code, and they had this construction work was what was bringing them together. Usually it's kingship that brings people together, but right now it is what they had was the written code, the book of Deuteronomy, and some part of the law, and of course they had this thing. So to understand this specific narrative, which we call Nehemiah, you must first be able to locate it within this literary concept that we're talking about, Ezra, Nehemiah. It was a period of trauma. Historically, we call it historical trauma of Babylonian construction. The trauma, and looking at it, I'm thinking about my own traumas also. We all have, to know the trauma. And I want you to think about your trauma, when I say trauma, the thing that shock you, a time in your life that upsets you, a disturbance, an ordeal, a battle, a suffering. So that is what they were. It was a historical time, a historical trauma of Babylonian construction. Whenever they think about this construction, they don't think about the construction of the original temple. There was no trauma in that place. They had abundance. In fact, the Bible said that they provided too much resources. David gave almost everything, to build it. Then Solomon had, everybody brought. So it was joyful building, but this was very, very traumatic. Now, going back a bit, just 70 years, before this time, what was the trauma? Historically, we call it 586 BC, 586 years before Jesus Christ, was born. That was a watershed moment in their life. That was the moment that defined every single thing. For you to understand their trauma, you need to go back to why that trauma began. One, Babylonians, they invaded their land. They literally decimated the temple. They breached the walls. And interestingly, which is shockingly, they blindfolded that their last king, King Zedekiah, of Judah. They blindfolded him after executing his son in front of him. After they executed his sons, what they did was to end 400 years, I'm sorry, 400 century, 4 centuries, which is 400 years, 4 centuries of Davidic dynasty. That's what they did. From that time on, Israel never had a king anymore. They never had any king. But even though the line of David was still there, but nobody was pronounced king. Now you might ask me, what about Herod? Well, Herod was an Edomite. He was not an Israelite. So they never, till today, they never had a king. So whenever they look at that period, it was trauma. So today I want us to begin to look at our own trauma, and I want us to re-examine the covenantal promise that we've made. The covenantal relationship that we have with our God, because a lot of times things will happen even as you begin. Of course, that darkness was broken by King Cyrus. Cyrus gave them a decree they should go back. So the book of Nehemiah and Ezra, they were regarded as this book that kind of sparked the light in there. So I want us to look at your life today. Who will you relate to more? I mean, they are both good. Whichever one you relate to is great. Are you related more? Will you relate yourself more to a Nehemiah, or are you more of an Ezra? Are you more of a Nehemiah or an Ezra? Now, I am almost both in a way. I'm less of an Ezra when it comes to his emotional, his emotional response. I'm less of an Ezra when it comes to his emotional response towards sin, he was wailing, he was very, very, no, I'm more of a Nehemiah when it comes to sin. I'm more of, let's kill somebody, let us go and do something, but I'm more of an Ezra when it comes to focus on the written law. I'm a teacher, obviously, so we now find these waves, in biblical, we call them waves. The very first wave was led by Zerubbabel. Remember that name, is Zerubbabel, and his primary focus of restoration. They all came to restore, but Zerubbabel's primary focus of restoration was basically the temple and the ceremonial worship. Okay, we looked at that from Ezra 1-6. He talks about that. Then the second wave is when Ezra himself came back. Ezra came back, he led the second wave, and the focus was the people. It was a people's person. Focus was the people. Remember, Zerubbabel was the temple and ceremonial worship, and then Israel's focus was on the people and spiritual reform. Okay, he was teaching them, the law. Now Nehemiah came in our third, wave here, and his own was okay. Yes, we have a temple, but we are a shame. It's a shame. Any city, we usually recorded as a shame. We city without wall. So Nehemiah own is, let's come and build back the wall, and let's come and restore social justice. Let's come and restore political order. So you can see all of us are building. Whether you are building the temple, whether you are building the people and religious order, whether you are building the protection, the wall, we are all, building. You see, in a church, usually there are key gifts that God has given to people. There are many gifts God has given to people, and God now takes those people and He gives them as gifts to the church. That was what I told a disciple a few weeks ago. I said, hey, why I do what I do? One, God has given me gifts. And number two, God has given me as a person, I'm a gift to the church. So one, I have to use my gifts. I have to acknowledge my gifts. Then I have to use my gifts, because those gifts are not private, gifts. There's something I call the TEE, the teachers, the evangelists, and the elders. Now, sometimes we add administrators are also there. But we see the church being run by teachers, evangelists, and elders. Teachers, evangelists, and elders. Where we fail in any of these things, the church will not be balanced. Or where we project one of those roles above. Like again, I tell you guys, it is not too much of the church in Colossae. It's not too much of the church in Ephesus. It's not too much of the church in Philadelphia. Talking about the church in Revelation. It's too much Philadelphia in the church. Too much Colossae in the church. Too much, so sometimes we begin to mirror And we always do that. We begin to mirror, the society, and that's what the church does. We are supposed to be countercultural, but sometimes we begin to become, cultural. So why is Zerubbabel, restored a place of worship? Excuse me. And of course, Israel, restored the heart of worship. Nehemiah, arrived many years later, about 13 years after. That's when Nehemiah arrived. That's after Ezra has given that speech and everything. Nehemiah, now arrived to see a disgraced city, because a city without wall is a disgraced, city. So without walls, you are not safe. You don't about physical safety in those days. It was a symbol of strength. A city that is walled is a symbol of strength. But a city without walls is a symbol of humiliation. You'll be humiliated. It's like you'll be stripped naked. Everybody can see you. Everybody can come in and go out because there's no walls. They can come in and go out. There's no doors. There's no everything. So the connection here is between the temple and the walls. Remember, these people came for the temple, which was a sacred thing, very sacred. And now these other people came for the wall, which is secular. And that's what I want us to look at today. It's a very profound thing. Without walls, the temple, remain at risk from bandits, from marauders, from suicide bombers, from anybody. Then as a community, they could not experience the dignity required to live out this conventional calling. It's like somebody without clothes. Okay, without clothes, walking around. So that's why they needed this wall. So all of us are here to build. And I want to look at the character of the people that are building here. The method I'm going to use this morning will be, again, the method of storytelling. I'm not going to go ahead. It's a very short chapter, chapter 2. I'm not going to go ahead and read the chapter. I want to go and read the chapter by yourself. But what I want to do here is to help you so that when you are reading that chapter, you're able to say, oh, this is what it means. All right. So I've given you all of this. So the future, we have Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra was a priest, a scribe. Nehemiah was who? He was a high government official. They are both, different. And, Ezra, his own temperament, as I studied, Ezra's temperament was more reflective. He was very sensitive. He's a guy who will cry over people's sin, not his own sin. He's a guy who will stay in one place, who will fast. But when it comes to Nehemiah, it's more of let's take charge. It was very intuitive. Very intuitive. If you look at Ezra, his primary task was to teach the Torah, was to let them see. But for Nehemiah, he was not a teacher, he was a builder. Was a construction man. It was to rebuild fortification. So while one is teaching, one is fortifying. Fortifying. So think about this scenario. Let's have evangelists launch the charge in terms of evangelism, the charge of church growth. That's the job of evangelists. Evangelism, church growth, breaking new ground as it were. So why they are doing that? The teachers are looking at the scriptural purity. What they are teaching people as they're bringing them in, the teachers are teaching. They are expanding. You don't preach at disciples. You preach at people who are lost. But you teach the disciples. So while the teachers are teaching, the elders are closing the back door. The elders are making sure that people are not leaving. Even those who leave, they are restoring it back. So you see the way they work. But when you have a church where those synergy are not acknowledged, or that synergy is not practiced or not allowed, to function, that is where you're going to have a crisis. Like in our country right now, what job of the judiciary? Judiciary is like they're powerless. It's like the executive that determines everything. The executive have usurped every single authority. Legislators have also been bought over. So who polices the police? I want to ask. So Nehemiah's leadership style is characterized by what I would call, pragmatic belief. He also believed, because you see that he started his own journey also by prayer. He was a man who was focused who has this focus that distinguished him from other people who were over there. He was not distracted by enemies. Think about what he said. When they talk about what he's doing, he said, I'm going to go and do a great work. I cannot come down. Even when they tell him, oh, let us have a meeting, he said, no, what I'm doing is too important. I cannot come down. And that was how he actually complemented the work of these people who call the post-exilic prophets, and God willing, before the end of this year, we're going to be looking at the minor prophets. We look at people like probably like what's his name again? Haggai. We look at prophet like Zechariah, also prophet like Malachi. So you can see why the prophets were preaching and encouraging people, and Ezra was teaching the scriptures. This guy is building. So you see, we have that division of labor, that happened. Now, going back to Nehemiah, he was a cup-bearer, somebody who is that close to the king. He was a special assistant to the king. He was close to power. And when he came before the king knew that he was a very cheerful man. Normally, he's a very cheerful guy. But look at him and say, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" He said, No, this is not sickness. We are not sick. This, if you are sick, we will know. But this is like something is bothering you. And the king asked him that question: "What do you want? What is bothering you?" And think about how Nehemiah began to respond. He responded. He said, "I've just gotten, what they put it, I've just gotten reports." I'm using my own word right now. I got reports from my brothers. Some of my brothers went to Jerusalem to go and check it out. Oh, we heard that temple has been built. Amen. We heard that people are worshiping. Amen. But the report that came to me is that there's no war. We are, vulnerable. And he did what we call the first time I heard it was like almost 20 years ago, at the arrow prayer. What did you think he said? How long did you think he prayed for? When the king asked him, "So what can I do for you? What do you want me to do for you?" After I had told everything, what can I do? What do you want to do? And I would say he just said a prayer. It's called an arrow prayer. Short but precise. And he prayed and he said, "Please send me to go and do the job, to go and rebuild." Now, between the time that we're told, if you look at, if you know Hebrew and the calendar, the Bible said that that thing happened in the month of Kislev. Now, I know the month of Kislev between November and December. Kislev, November and December. That was a cold period, the winter period. But by the time he said he left, that was he left at the month of Nisan, which is actually what we are, right now. This month of Nisan, March and April. That was about 4 months. You see, what does that tell you? He prayed. He didn't just jump into it. Now, it could also be that he had to finish his own court order. I mean, like his own service. Because they normally do service every quarter. They change another person and on, so he can go on leave. But we left 4 months after. So that 4 months period, I'm thinking to myself, that 4 months period of wait was approximately 120, maybe 122 days. He remained in the posture of prayer and fasting. Now look at the comparison between Nehemiah and Ezra. Ezra too declared a fast, and Nehemiah too declared a fast. So that is the focus of our study today. It's about bringing everything to God in prayer. Now, I want to be more of that because of my pragmatism. Sometimes I've seen myself launching ahead and praying later. All right. So this interval that we see here is viewed as let's say an investment rather than a waste of time. Okay, an investment rather than a waste of time. So it was 4 months. And I don't know where you are right now in your journey. We have all kinds of journey: health journey, financial journey, relational journey, marital journey, all kinds of journey. When you are prayed, between the time that you pray and the time that you launch out, what are you doing, or what is determining that that time? So this 4 months, Nehemiah was not passive. He was not just just hanging out. He was basically allowing the divine burden to align with God. This is what I want to do. I really feel so. That period of fasting and praying will now align with God's timing and the specific logistic of the task. So you just don't want to drop. If you jump out, that will be faith without thinking, really. But that period, I believe, that's what I believe in my heart, that I use that time to plan, to get his team together while he's praying and fasting, get his team together, write his plan out, marshal out everything, write out his leave allowance. Get his leave allowance, get his leave application form signed. So the delay might have been anything, but it does seem like Nehemiah is a planner. We're going to see that by the time we start looking at his life, this guy was a great planner. Look at it, the elements of that for 4 months that you'll see when you read chapter 2. The element you'll see is that there was prayer, there was patience, and there was planning. I call them the 3 Ps. That's what we all need. That in your preparation period, prayer, patience, and planning. Prayer, patience, and planning. God did an incredible thing in my life this past week. Every week, every time it's incredible. I am so grateful. Even while I was coming, I was just thanking God. Twice I was thanking, I said, God, you seem to be, my life is just planned by you. Everything that happens for a purpose. So I just finished the semester work in the School of Mission, teaching for weeks, losing my voice. And I really didn't have plan of, okay, what will my next 1 week or 2 weeks be, until I got a call from somebody that I mentored years ago. And it's been years that we saw out of the blues. Hey bro, how you doing? Oh, I'm in town. Do you mind coming over? Come over so we can hang out. Who does that? Do you know what I'm doing? And for some reason, I had this week break, which he didn't know. Just come over. I said, okay, so how do I come over? Air, road, or sea? He said, of course, by air. Before I know it, my ticket was there. I flew down. I was telling my wife that it was like a pilgrimage. God just planned a pilgrimage. We just hang outside. It was a time of daily prayer. My son and brother praying together every day, having prayer walk, exercising, going to run and walk distances, looking at the Bible, even our early morning prayer. Joining our early morning prayer, planning, sharing our lives, looking at opportunities. And I was like, wait a minute, what's happening, God? This is exactly 1 year, month of March. This is exactly 1 year that I had left a job, not a life, a job that I've done for over 30 years. And God just said, at exactly 1 year, I'm going to get you to see what I have done and see what I could do. So I came back. I was so energized. Everybody, I said, man, I went on a pilgrimage where it's like climbing, the mountain, and God showing me the promised land. And I began to write. I began to change my strategy. I began to dream bigger in every way. So where are you today? What is your arrow prayer, or your arrow, or your how do I call it, your ballistic prayer, boom, that we want to shoot? I want you to begin to focus on that today. Maybe you are in a waiting period right now. I want you to look at Nehemiah. Use the study of Nehemiah to align yourself again. Every now and then we walk into align ourselves. Walk into align ourselves. So that focus was a time of aligning himself. And we're going to see what that alignment does. And this thing, it shattered some of my beliefs. Okay, it shattered some of when I say my beliefs, not shattering, like some things I've always heard, but I struggle with. I'll give you an example. You see, it became obvious that wise building, all of us here, wise building flows from prayerful dependence and bold obedience. Prayerful dependence, bold obedience. You cannot be prayerful and be weak in your faith. You cannot be prayerful and be afraid. You cannot be prayerful and be, so when you have prayerful dependence, you depend on prayer, then when you launch out, you're going to be very, very bold. So the first fundamental principle for restoring purpose in your life today is that the work must be initiated prayerfully. Whatever you want to do, you must initiate it prayerfully. So Nehemiah demonstrated that prayer is not merely, let's say, a formality. Like sometimes we think it is, let me just pray and boom. You cannot connect your prayer and the things you're going to do. It's not a formality. Sometimes, have you noticed that sometimes when we pray for food, we don't remember even the things we say because we are more focused on the food. Sometimes we just say, bless the full of amen. Just go and eat. But that's not the kind of thing we're talking about here. It is not mere formality, but it's actually a necessary leadership habit. If you want to go far, you have to sink into that prayer thing. And it's a habit, that enhances communication with God, and it secures your vision for your ministry. When you pray, listen, it is not how long you pray. Of course, we've seen that in Nehemiah. It is not how long or how short, but it's the content of your prayer and the position of your heart. That's why if you pray without faith, it's not going to happen. So wise building no matter what you're building today. Wise building recognizes that successful invention, whatever you want to do or whatever you want to go and achieve, it depends on your gracious hand of God that is going to be on you. The gracious hand of God will be on you. No matter how skilled I am, I have to rely on God rather than you relying on talent, on your position, on your power. Look at somebody who was by the king. He could have said, I have the king's mandate, I am the courier to the king, whatever. No, it still depends on prayer. So Nehemiah, did not rely on the court intrigues that he relied on God. Why still? At the same time, you see those two things. He relied on God. Why still? Effectively, he was engaging the human channels that were available to him. Maybe you want to get a job, a contract. Maybe you want to negotiate to buy something, maybe a car, maybe a house, maybe you want to go to school, whatever. Why you are still, wherever you are depending on God, you are also still investigating all the human channels that are available. That's why the Bible says faith without work is dead. You can't say, God, do this for me. You're not looking out for what God can show you. So it is a battle of comparing the two, of doing two. But the first must be prayer. So that bold obedience, it becomes a natural partner to prayerful dependency. So Nehemiah was very bold. It was because he had already prayed. So once Nehemiah received information of God's dealing, of God's leadership, of God's plan, whatever, then he was willing to leave that position where he was. Sometimes we are afraid to move. Sometimes we are afraid to leave, to let go of the small that we have. But immediately Nehemiah was convinced that this is God, calling him. He was willing to leave. It was a secure environment. It's like you leaving America to want to come to your village, to go and leave your village, or wherever you have a job or something, or whatever, because you have a project to do. He was able to leave a very secure environment, highly prestigious position, to come and perform this hard labor in a very politically insignificant district, Judea. Very politically insignificant. So he did not start by apologizing for the request or seeking for mercy. No, he seized the opportunity that he had. He was very bold. He was very specific. He asked for letters. When he said, "What do you need?" He asked for letters of safe conduct. Write me a letter. He asked for timber. He asked for gates. He asked for whatever. He began to ask for things that is going to do. All the tools that is going to do. Even the principal challenge that he had there, he didn't think about it. So this was a man who was going by faith. So if you look at it, the synergy again between your spiritual vision that you have and the administrative detail that is meant, for you, could just be, the answer that the question, demands from you. That means immediately he was ensuring the monarch that project was well conceived rather than his emotional impulse. He told him, this is what I want to do. He didn't go and say, oh, you know what? He was ensuring the monarch, what I'm doing is going to help our people, is going to whatever. Then he was not going there to beg. I want us today to join me in affirming one thing in three ways. Number one, I, Emmanuel, I affirm that my purpose is established by God and supported by his gracious hand. You have to believe that your purpose is established by God and is supported by his gracious hand. God will not send you on an errand where he will not give you support to finish that errand. Number two, I will not rush ahead in my own strength or shrink back in fear, but I will wait for the Lord in prayer. So even though I know what I'm going to do, I'm not going to rush. I'm going to wait that time to listen to God, to be able to hear him say, on your mark, say, go. And number three, when the door opens, and the door will open for all of us. When the door opens, I will speak with boldness and I will act with boldness, trusting that God of heaven will make me prosper. So number one is that I'm going to go to God in prayer. I'm going to trust in God. That because God is with me, he's sending me out, so he's going to be with me because he's all with me. But I'm not going to run ahead of God. I'm not going to shrink back in fear, but I'm going to wait on that God. And letting God opens that door, I'm going to speak. For some of us today, people ask you a question, what can I do for you? And you begin to, the Bible will say, Kalulu. Instead, that man I just can ask, hey, do you want to get well? And got to tell stories. Oh, I've been here since. No. What do you want? Boldness. A lot of times we become like the disciples of old that were praying for Peter to release from jail. Here was Peter in jail, and they had an all-night prayer. They were praying, God, please release Peter, release Peter, release Peter. And Peter was right there at the door knocking. There was a servant girl, Rhoda, that went there. Who is there? You don't know because they're afraid. Who is there? Uncle Peter is here. Who? Uncle Peter. She ran. You left the door closed. He ran. Uncle Peter is here. Guess what? They rebuked her. How can it be Peter? I bet let's go out to a prayer. You pray, but you do not believe. So you do not know when God is answering your prayer. So today I want you to know that strategic, investigation as a prerequisite. You need it. You need to think for whatever purposeful action that you want to have. And I think that's the second thing that Nehemiah did. After he has asked, he has said what he wants to do, he began to prepare. So I want all of us to be able to prepare. What do you want? There was a story about a man, a village who they've not had rain for many years, for a long time. They've not had rain. So they had to go and ask this rainmaker, this man of God, rainmaker came, said that guy can make rain. So he said, everybody should gather to the village square. That rain is going to fall. So the whole village gathered, and the man stood up. And the man said, well, I've come here to come and make rain, which is what you invited me to come and do. But I'm sorry, rain will not fall till today. They were like, why? Is that what we prepared you for? He said, because you guys are not prepared. He said, how many of you here brought an umbrella? Not one person. So how do you expect rain to fall when you didn't bring an umbrella? So when Nehemiah arrived in that place, he did this nocturnal investigation. I said nocturnal because in the night. He went to go and survey. Okay, he was a reflective person. He went to go and survey. It was slow enough for you to listen. He went around. He was hearing what people were saying. Nobody knew what has come to come and do. He didn't tell anybody yet, and that's what I call the strategy of secrecy. Now I struggle with that. I struggle with that. The strategy of secrecy. Why do I struggle with that? Because as a disciple, I grew up knowing how to be open, and whatever. But when I read something like that, I said, this guy didn't say, and I've had some people say, keep it to your chest. And I mean, you say it here. Whatever he will keep it to his chest. Keep it to his chest. How are you going to keep it to your chest? There's actually strategic secrecy where you go and plan. And I have learned that sometimes when you tell your plans too early, some things can happen. It can fall to the ears of people who are your enemies, right? That's what happens in the world. Your enemies, and they are going to come and start fighting you. So that was why he kept it, because he was in a community where people are not safe. It was not safe. He kept it until he had determined what was going to go. I mean, from the valley gate to the dung well, and to the dung gate, to the king's pool. He went round. It took time for him to go. Maybe he did it several nights. He was walking the ground. Maybe he was praying, as we're doing it. So leaders and individuals must be willing. You must be willing to, perform an honest assessment of your own broken wall. Where is your broken wall today? Your broken wall can be in your marriage. It can be in your leadership. It can be in your parenting. It can be in your finances. It can be in your, I'm making this up. It can be in your business. It can be in your health. It can be anywhere. So make an honest assessment. Before you jump, you make an assessment. Whether they are damaged relationship, whether there are addictions in your life, whether there are spiritual apathy in your life, because before you can effectively move into restoration, you must have an honest assessment. And that is what you will see Nehemiah do in chapter 2. Success, believe you me, success is achieved when when you refuse to minimize the difficulties. Instead, you are facing the brutal facts. Like Abraham, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead. Not minimizing it. No. What is the truth? What is the true condition of your finances today? Are you broke? You must say, you know what? Hey, right now I am broke. Or are you healthy? Or right now I am sick. Well, that's what Abraham did. Abraham said that his body was as good as dead. That Sarah's womb was dead. He has passed the age of bearing child. That is when faith will now come in. So faith is not minimizing the facts before you. Or let's say you want to go from Lagos to Abeokuta, and you only have 10 liters of fuel. You have to say, oh, I have a 10 liters of fuel. That would not cost to say, so what do I do? What do I pray? Pray for. So join me in affirming again. Number one, I affirm that I will walk through the rules of my life with honesty and prayer, refusing to hide from the robbers. I'm going to walk through the rules of my life with honesty. I'm going to walk through with prayer. I'm going to refuse to hide the robbers. What are the robbers in your life today? Number two, I'm going to listen to the Lord's specific strategy in a very quiet moment of my life. I'm going to allow the Lord, to be the architect of my future. After your honest assessment, I'm going to allow the Lord. And number three, I choose to be well informed. I choose to be fully assured before I rise to build. I want to be well informed. What is the situation like? How much will it cost me? Who will come and build with me? What are the equipment? Jesus Christ said you have to sit down and count the costs. Don't just start. Count the cost. Have a time of reflection. And finally, I want to tell of us that for you to overcome external mockery and discouragement, you need to look at Nehemiah. Because when you start to build, people are going to mock you. People, they might not be that mock. It might just be things that people are going to drop this in your ear that is going to make you feel bad, make you feel, discouragement. And that is the third stage of the narrative that you're going to read in this second chapter of Nehemiah. Because as soon as Nehemiah announced his vision to the people, remember, he was coming to himself. He was close to his chest. But as soon as he announced to the people, that he's committed to do this thing, 3 people came up. So I want to look at your life today. You identify the Sanballats in your life. We have the Sanballats. In fact, I call them the STG for whatever that one means. That's what I put down. STG. What are the Sanballats? What are the Tobiah? And what are the Gershon? Now think about who are they. Sanballats, the Horonites, he's from the north. Okay, Tobiah, the Ammonites, they're just by the side, is by the east. Then Gershon, the Arab, is by the south. So they were surrounded, of course, by the west is the Mediterranean Sea and everything. So people are going to surround you to destroy. This guy was right in the middle of the enemy territory. He was north, east, south. He was surrounded. All he had was his God. So they're going to bring psychological intimidation. That's what they're doing. So this enemy, their primary weapon, they didn't go and carry sword and carry knife. No. What they did was called psychological intimidation. They were aiming at making the builders feel defeated. That's what the America and these guys are doing right now. The propaganda. They will go and paste stories that are not true. They will go and show, video game, explosion. Video game. All this time video game. They will say, oh, they just bomb here, whether they just kill them. That's just to make you feel discouraged. So they use words to attack the mind. People today are going to use words to attack your mind. They're also going to use questioning the Israelite motive. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this task? Or you whatever. In fact, the most insulting one will they say, what are you building? Look at what you're building. That's what this Tobiah guy said. He said, what you have this stone? Which kind of stone are you doing? He said, even if a fox is a small animal, if a fox climbs this, it will break it down. Do you know how demoralizing that will be? How much do you even have? I want to do this. How much? Who gave you this? Who gave you idea? You cannot do it now. Who in your family have ever done something like this before? Who do you know? You don't know anybody now. Well, all these things are going to come. They might be external, but it is worse when it's internal. Sometimes it could be the voice in your mind. So identify the Sanballats in the north. What was the method he used? He used mockery and he used anger. And how did Nehemiah respond to him? He declared what is the vision. A declaration of a divine, the prosperity that he has. So we're going to finish, this thing. Then Tobiah. Who are the Tobiah in your life? The Ammonites in your life. What did they do? They were, what I say? They used contentment and sarcasm. When you jesting at them, sarcasm, that's what the guy did. Look at what you are doing. Even a force will fall there. How did Nehemiah respond to him? He refused to come down. He said, come down, let's talk. Oh, let us go and have a meeting. So I'm not going to come out. What I'm doing is too important. What about the Jasham in your life, the Arabs in your life, the guys in the south? What if they began to use accusation of rebellion? Oh, you guys are trying to rebel, Abi. All kinds of things. They're trying to put things in their mind. How did Nehemiah respond to him? He basically identified as God's servant. I am here to serve God. So how will you answer today? Nehemiah said, the God of heaven will make us prosper. And we are his servant. We were going to rise and we are going to build. It's all about God's authority. It's not about Nehemiah's reputation. Sometimes we fight because of our reputation. Oh, I feel hurt. I don't like the way this person spoke to me. So we are protecting our reputation. But when you stand up to fight for God's honor, listen, man, God is the one that has sent me out. God's the one that I pray to. God's the one that is with me. When you do that, then you'll be able to affirm. To me, I affirm that I will not be distracted by the voice of mockery or the whispers of the enemy. I'm not going to be distracted. The voice of mockery, you can't do it. It can never be done. Look at you. How much do you have? Where do you come from? You are not, all those things. Don't be distracted by that. No, number two, I'm going to stay focused. I will stay focused on the great work that God has called me to do. We are going to stay focused. I'm not going to look right. I'm going to look left. Nehemiah was a master of focus. It was like some of you walk in the day, some of you walk at night, some of you go home. After a while, when the opposition increases, nobody goes home anymore. Nobody goes home. All of you are going to stay here. While one is working, one is going to be carrying sword and lights. Then afterwards, say, okay, everybody's going to carry sword and walk. And that was why something that took a generation to build, people couldn't believe. You are going to see what happened. When you hear the number of weeks it took to finish this war, it was impossible. Nobody could have done that. It can only be God. It can only be God that did that thing. It took them a generation to finish building that wall. And yes, it was done in a matter of weeks and it was built well. So today, if you look at the parallel in your life today, what are you facing? What are the modern rubbles in your life? Broken relationship, spiritual slumber in your life, disgrace, that like arrow of disgrace in your life, worldly distraction in your life. What are the practical parallel? Marriage, fracture, isolation, apathy, towards the word of God. You have hidden sin you don't want to talk about. You have shame. Maybe you have materialism, individual focus, whatever. What is the Nehemiah protocol today? I want all of us to develop a Nehemiah protocol. For broken relationship, what would you do? You need to invite others into the work to support you. This is what I'm going through. I need help. For spiritual slumber in your life, you need deeper reflection. You need to you need to be woke. That's what I'm looking at. I think about woke. So you need to just soji with the truth. You need to say, hey, I've been sleeping, now I'm awake. For all of disgrace in your life, you need repentance and refusal to excuse failures in your life. Just repent. And of course, if you are distracted by worldly passion and distraction, if those are the rubbles in your life, then you need passionate focus on the kingdom of God. There's so much I can talk to us about today. God, this is I see myself in this story, and I hope you see yourself. So the call to action today is for us to study chapter 2. I believe when you now read it today, this is going to make sense. Because in chapter 2, it demonstrates that wise building is never haphazard. You want to build wise. It is the product of prayerful dependence and, of course, bold obedience. Prayerful dependence, bold obedience. Because we didn't see Nehemiah, floundering in any way. Nehemiah did not wait for the perfect plan, before he started to pray. He just prayed at the right moment. So our call to action: pray specifically, then take a bold step. Today. Pick some area of your life in any whatever. Pray specifically. But God, I want to shoot an arrow prayer specifically at this thing. Then take one step of faith today. A specific prayer might be, might be identifying who are the gatekeepers. They call them the gatekeepers. These are people that will open doors for you. You go and talk to them. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid. There are people, maybe you want to get a contract. Maybe you want to get, education. Maybe you want to get, I don't know. But there are people who know the OJ behind it. Talk to them. For me as a person, I've always shied away from, oh, I do it for other people. That's why people, but for myself, that's one of the inhibition I've had as for many years, because something in our mind will tell, oh, you are doing it for yourself. So we don't do things for ourselves. We do for other people. But that notion has to be, shattered in my life. And that's one of the things that God did in this retreat, so identify who are the gatekeepers, who control resources, who can connect you to where you want to be. They have, the hidden secrets wherever there. You go to them, pray, then go to them. Number two, a faith that steps, take a step of faith that might involve you initiating a difficult conversation. Maybe you had quarrel with somebody. Maybe you want to start that difficult conversation. Start a new spiritual discipline today. Maybe it's to fast. Maybe it's to pray. Maybe start something. Maybe that's picking up the bricks in your life. Maybe it's to talk to your spouse. Maybe to talk to your child. Maybe to talk to your neighbor. You have to do that. So by combining spiritual dependence with strategic diligence, I believe that the ruins of the past, they can be transformed into purpose for the future, so that we stop living in the past.